We had to create it from CDs. 6 times as many CDs as you'd find in the largest record store in central London, Virgin Megastore. And there was no Amazon cloud. So we built from the ground up a Google-like Beowulf cluster of PCs on which we housed all the fingerprints of all this music. Essentially a search engine, but instead for the web, it was for music. And so we launched. These are 2 of my co-founders, Diraj and Philippe, celebrating at that launch party. As I said, we were on top of the world, summer of 2002. But then reality set in. We had been projecting tens of millions of users and hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. And we didn't get 10 million users or 1 million users or 100,000 users. I don't even know if we got to the tens of thousands of users. It was challenging because this is what the phones looked like then. There was no app store. There was no color, no graphics, no ability to buy a song after you identified it, no iTunes, no downloadable songs, no streaming. We were limited. All you could do is dial a 4-digit phone number, 2580, the 4 numbers down the middle of the phone. Hold your phone in the air and then receive a text message with the name of the song. We had to make money, so we had to charge people every time they did it. That was our only business model, kind of like dialing directory inquiries. And of course, that didn't help in consumer adoption. And so we kicked in our marketing. We hired a stellar, talented marketeer who ran our marketing. He had run marketing for the largest radio station group in the UK. We did billboards, banner ads, internet ads, TV ads, radio ads. We even hired people to walk into bars and show Shazam to people. But it didn't work. It wasn't cost effective, and we certainly didn't get an ROI on the dollars spent of marketing. So it wasn't going to be scalable for us. And so now, reality setting in, our funds were burning up. We're now running out of that $7.5 million of venture capital. It was almost all gone. And when we go back to the people who have more of that money, they were a little bit afraid about giving more money, or a lot afraid about giving more money to a company that doesn't have users, doesn't have revenue, doesn't have user growth, and it's continuing to be really hard times in 2002. But luckily, we raised a little bit more money to survive just a little longer. And of course, when you're burning all your money and you're trying to keep your burn rate low, you have to do what's the worst of all things for an entrepreneur, layoffs. And we had to do layoffs, which is very demoralizing at a time when you just successfully did everything you said you would do. You conquered all the insurmountable problems of inventing a technology, building a cluster search engine, building a database of all music fingerprints, and still you end up with layoffs, laying off talented employees. And then at cash strapped, we couldn't then do the things we needed to do to grow the business. We couldn't invest. So for example, we had a feature called Song Mail that we were going to build. And this would allow you to do kind of a social feature. After you identify a song, you'd be able to share it with another person on their mobile phone, and they could listen to it. And that would be viral, and it would drive growth. The only problem is it required music rights, and music rights require upfront payments to major labels. So that was not a possibility, because we had no money. We couldn't spend money on the early incarnations of mobile apps, the preliminary versions of those called Java and Brew. We couldn't spend money on international expansion, so we were stuck to the UK market. So we were truly cash-strapped, just barely trying to survive. And we had built a side business, B2B, monitoring thousands of radio stations and producing reports around what those radio stations were playing. And we were forced to sell that business to bring money into the company. Frankly, it saved the company. But we sold that off to another company, and with it, all of our patents and all of our technology rights, so that we could just focus on continuing to try to build this consumer business. And then finally, 6 years later, 6 years after that, being on top of the world in the summer of 2002, 6 years of surviving, and scraping up funds to pay payroll the next month, the iPhone App Store launched in 2008. It solved so many problems for us. Now there was a way to discover things like Shazam. Now people had understood the behavior of doing things with your mobile phone other than making phone calls and sending text messages. We didn't have to retrain that behavior. Now there was a graphical user interface, so you could show things like album covers and pictures of artists and just beautiful experiences. And now there was a digital music community, so that after you identified a song, you could actually do something with it, like download it from iTunes. And so today, Shazam's had 1 billion downloads and gets 8 million new downloads every month from new users. And what's exciting for me is we have thousands of artists that are verified and signed into Shazam, much like they do with Facebook and Twitter accounts. And they reach out to their existing fans and to their new fans through Shazam. So for me, the learning from all this experience is captured in this mathematical description of perseverance. If this is the impact of 1 year of perseverance, that putting in that extra 1% every day, imagine the impact of 6 years of perseverance. And that is the greatest learning for me as an entrepreneur, is sticking with it through all those bad times. Because if you believe in it, you can eventually get there. Thank you.
We have some time for some questions. 3 questions. All right, that guy's hand has been up this entire time. I'm going to come. I'll run over here. There you go.
Hi, my name is Vinny, and I use your app a lot, so thank you for that. Also, I wanted to know, because people only spend minutes, if not seconds, on your app, and it's also free, and people usually, they don't use it all the time, right? It's under very specific circumstances. So I was just wondering, how do you deal with the challenge of very fast advertising? Because that's where your money comes from, right?
That's a great question, and that is probably one of our bigger challenges that we've been focused on for years. So Shazam is by definition a low engagement app. It's not an app that you spend tons of time in like you do with Snapchat and Facebook and so on. And so I wouldn't say that the solution is fast advertising, but I think the solution is to drive up more engagement and give people more reasons to use Shazam and to spend more time in Shazam. And that's a big focus for us. We have a large number of users, over 100 million people that use Shazam every month around the world. But what we try to give them more and more reasons to use Shazam, such as integrating with Spotify playlists so that everything you Shazam ends up in your Spotify, such as building music discovery experiences where you can seek out more music that you like, and giving people, and then building into other experiences around interactions. And then the other thing, just to finish that off, is in addition to the innovation, rather than being speedy in advertising, is to turn Shazam into a tool that can be used for advertisers. And that's something that we've done and is a big part of our business. So advertisers can make their TV advertisement Shazamable, or their radio advertisement Shazamable, and you can Shazam those in order to get into an immediate experience on your mobile phone. And so we call that Shazam for brands. So hopefully that answers your question.
I got another one back down here.
Hi, my name is Robert Greeley, and my question is, when you first started seeing some growth in your business, what were some of the challenges you saw and how did you overcome them?
So the astronomic growth that we experienced, as I mentioned, started with the App Store in 2008 and in the ensuing years. And without doubt, the number one challenge for us during that period was building the infrastructure and the software behind the infrastructure that would allow us to scale in a cost-effective way. And for years, we've invested in better and better technologies, like migration to graphical processing units, optimizations of our algorithms, and so on, so that we could continue to scale with the large number of users and the large number of recognition requests that were coming into our system. And that on top of a growing music database, where when we launched our music database, as I mentioned, had 6 times as many CDs as the largest record store in the UK. So that was 100,000 CDs, or about 1.7 million songs. And today we have more than 35 million songs. So we've also had to accommodate that growth alongside.
Hi, I love Shazam. I've used it for a long time, but I always assumed it was going to be acquired by iTunes or maybe now Spotify. Could you talk a little bit about that and then maybe like the long-term vision that you guys have?
Yeah, we obviously have not been acquired by those companies. I definitely think that there is, we definitely work very closely with those companies and provide a lot of benefit to them. We drive over $300 million of music downloads on iTunes per year. We're the number one referrer of music downloads to iTunes. And we drive over 750 million songs being added to Spotify playlists every year. In terms of, I'm not sure if I really knew what the question, but kind of what is our strategy? I think the strategy for every business is not to build specifically for an exit. If you want to be acquired, the goal is to build a very attractive, sustainable, self-sustaining business. And that includes being profitable, serving user interests, delighting users, and become self-sustaining. And that's been Shazam's strategy to date. Do I think we'll be acquired one day? Absolutely. But it's hard to know who that buyer would be.
Put your hands together for Chris. Thank you very much.
Connect the dots. A country girl in the Hollywood. Mama used to cook red beans and rice. Now it's Denny's farm in the morning, spoil your appetite. Liquor pouring and niggas warming your section with erection. Smoking every direction.